The quantum field does not ignore you because you're unworthy. It ignores you because of the state you're broadcasting. And one of the most misunderstood states in manifestation, one that sounds innocent, sincere, even spiritual, is begging. Not begging with words, but begging with energy. Begging is not about asking out loud. It's about the internal posture you hold while you ask. And the field reads, posture, not language. This is where many people get stuck for years without realizing it. They believe they are manifesting with faith, hope, and intention. But internally, their system is signaling urgency, dependence, and lack. That signal doesn't reach the field as desire. It reaches the field as absence. And the field never responds to absence by filling it. It responds by stabilizing it from the outside. Begging can look like prayer, visualization, or affirmation from the inside. And it feels like leaning forward emotionally, like something essential is missing now and must arrive for you to feel complete. That leaning forward is the signal. And that signal tells reality one thing very clearly. I do not have. The quantum field does not argue with that signal. It reflects it. This is the part that feels unfair until you understand the mechanics. The field is not judging your intention. It is not measuring how much you want something. It is not responding to how badly you need it. It is responding to the state of being you're inhabiting while you want it. And begging is a state. Begging carries tension. It carries emotional compression. It carries the feeling that something outside of you must change for you to relax. That feeling activates the nervous system into survival mode. And survival mode cannot broadcast coherence. From a quantum perspective, coherence is the only language the field understands. Coherence means your thoughts, emotions, and body are aligned in the same message. Begging fragments that message. One part of you wants, another part fears not having. Another part braces for disappointment. The signal becomes noisy. Noise does not collapse reality. Noise stretches probability. This is why intense desire often produces delay instead of speed. The more emotionally charged the wanting, the more the system signals separation. And separation is the opposite of manifestation. This is also why people who appear calm, detached, or even indifferent often receive what they want faster. Not because they care less, but because their internal state is already complete. They are not asking life to fix something inside them. They are speaking from the energy of having. Having is not arrogance. Having is not entitlement. Having is internal settlement. The energy of having feels neutral, grounded, unrushed. There is no emotional pulling, no justification, no explanation, no bargaining with time or fate. The body is relaxed enough to be present, and presence is coherence. The field responds to coherence instantly. Begging, on the other hand, always includes a timeline. Please soon. I need this now. I can't be okay until this happens. That timeline is the instruction, and the field follows instructions perfectly. This is why begging never works long term. Even when something arrives, it often collapses quickly because it was received from a state that could not sustain it. What most people don't realize is that manifestation doesn't fail when you ask. It fails when you ask from below. When your identity positions itself as incomplete, dependent, or waiting, the quantum field does not respond to hierarchy. It responds to equivalence. When you place what you want above you, you create distance. When you place it alongside you as something that already fits your state, distance disappears. This is not a mindset trick. It's a physiological and energetic shift. And until that shift happens, no amount of wanting, praying, or visualizing will override the signal your body is sending. In the next part, we'll break down exactly why begging activates the nervous system in a way that blocks coherence, how the brain confuses intensity with alignment, and how to recognize when you're subtly asking from lack. Even when your words sound positive, because the field doesn't ignore begging to punish you, it ignores it because it can only respond to who you are, not to what you're pleading for. And the moment that distinction becomes clear, everything about manifestation begins to change. Begging is not just an energetic concept. It is a measurable biological state. When you are internally asking from lack, your nervous system shifts into a mode of dependency and urgency. And this shift has very real consequences on how your brain and body operate and on how the quantum field receives your signal. From a neurobiological perspective, begging activates the same circuits associated with survival uncertainty. The body interprets "I need this to happen" as "I am not safe until this changes." Even if the desire is not about survival, the nervous system doesn't differentiate. It responds to the emotional tone, not the logical content. That response triggers subtle stress patterns. Cortisol increases slightly. Attention narrows. Breathing becomes shallower. The system leans forward, scanning for resolution. This is not panic. It's chronic readiness. And chronic readiness keeps the body oriented toward the future. Future orientation is the opposite of coherence. The brain in this state cannot fully inhabit the present moment. It is constantly preparing for what has not arrived. And preparation by definition signals that the desired state is absent. Now the field receives that signal clearly and reflects it back as continued absence. This is why wanting something badly often creates more resistance instead of momentum. The intensity of desire is not the problem. The problem is that intensity is usually paired with emotional dependency. Dependency fragments the signal. The quantum field does not respond to emotional volume. It responds to emotional stability. Stability comes from internal sufficiency. Sufficiency means the body is not waiting for an external event to relax. When the body can relax now, the signal becomes clean, and a clean signal collapses reality quickly. This is also why affirmations spoken from desperation don't work. The words may be positive, but the state underneath is asking. And asking when paired with need reinforces separation. The body hears the sentence and feels the lack behind it. The brain always trusts sensation over language. From the brain's perspective, begging keeps the loop open. The system believes something essential is missing and must be acquired. That belief keeps attention locked onto the absence, and attention amplifies whatever it rests on. So the system amplifies not having. From a quantum standpoint, attention is part of the observer effect. Where attention goes, probability organizes. When attention is anchored in lack, probability mirrors lack. Not because you deserve it, but because you are coherent with it. This is the part that feels confronting. The field is not withholding. It is matching. Begging feels sincere. But sincerity does not equal alignment. Alignment requires emotional independence from outcomes, not indifference. Independence, the ability to be whole before the event occurs. This independence is not forced detachment. It is internal completion. And internal completion is not something you think your way into. It happens when the nervous system no longer associates safety, worth, or peace with an external result. When that association dissolves, the body stops asking. When the body stops asking, the signal shifts instantly. This is why people often experience rapid manifestation right after giving up control. They didn't give up desire. They gave up dependency. Dependency was the block. The moment it dissolved, coherence returned. Begging collapses power downward. Having stabilizes power inward. The difference is not subtle. One feels tight and forward-leaning. The other feels grounded and still. And the field responds to stillness far more reliably than it responds to urgency. This doesn't mean you never ask. It means you stop asking from below. You stop placing what you want on a pedestal. You stop positioning yourself as incomplete until reality changes. In the next part, we'll explore exactly what the energy of having feels like in the body. How to recognize when you've crossed from asking into embodying, and why neutrality, not excitement, is the signature of real alignment. Because once you understand this distinction, you don't try to manifest differently. You exist differently and the field has no choice but to respond. The energy of having does not feel exciting. And this is where many people get confused. They think alignment should feel elevated, euphoric, or emotionally charged. But those sensations often belong to anticipation, not embodiment. The state of having is quieter than most people expect. Having feels settled. When you are in the energy of having, your body is not leaning forward or pulling back. Your breath is deeper without effort. Your thoughts slow down, not because you're suppressing them, but because there is nothing urgent to solve. There is no internal negotiation with reality. This neutrality is not boredom. It's completion. From a neurological standpoint, neutrality signals safety. When the nervous system perceives safety, it stops scanning for change. Scanning is a survival behavior. Survival behavior always implies lack. When scanning stops, the body enters coherence. Coherence is what the quantum field reads. This is why excitement often delays manifestation. Excitement feels positive, but it is still a forward-leaning state. It still says something good is about to happen and about to is still separation. The body is still waiting for confirmation. The energy of having does not wait for confirmation. It already assumes stability. This is why people who truly have something don't talk about it emotionally. They may acknowledge it, but there is no charge, no story, no explanation. The state is normalized internally. Normalization is the signal. When something is normalized in your nervous system, the field treats it as real. When something is emotionally charged, the field treats it as unresolved. This is also why begging often disguises itself as passion. Passionate wanting feels alive, but underneath it is still dependency. Dependency means your internal state is contingent on an external event. Contingency fragments coherence. Having removes contingency. The shift into having is not mental. You don't convince yourself. You notice it in the body first. The jaw unclenches. The shoulders drop. The stomach softens. The urge to check, ask or repeat disappears. This is the moment where the system stops requesting and starts allowing. From a quantum perspective, allowance collapses probability faster than effort ever could. Effort implies resistance. Allowance implies readiness. And readiness is a stable state. This is also why manifestation accelerates when people stop working on it. The work was keeping the system in becoming mode. Becoming mode always implies not yet. Being mode removes time. When you're in having mode, you don't feel like you're waiting for life to catch up. Life feels like it's already moving with you. And when something arrives, it doesn't feel shocking. It feels obvious. Of course, this happened. Of course, this showed up. That reaction is the clearest marker of alignment. Another sign you've shifted out of begging and into having is silence. Not intentional silence. We're in natural silence. You don't feel the need to talk about your desires, your fears, or your process. Not because you're hiding, but because there is nothing unresolved to process verbally. Words are tools for resolution. When resolution happens internally, words reduce themselves. This is also when manifestation becomes sustainable. Things don't appear and disappear. They stabilize because the identity that received them is capable of holding them without tension. Begging creates spikes. Having creates continuity. This is the distinction most people miss. They chase results without realizing they're asking from a state that cannot sustain what they want. The field reflects that instability faithfully. The moment you shift into having, you don't pull things in. You become compatible with them. Compatibility removes effort, and compatibility is felt somatically before it's seen externally. In the next part, we'll explore how to transition from begging to having without forcing detachment. Why trying to let go often backfires, and how identity naturally upgrades when the nervous system learns that nothing is missing right now. Because once the body believes that the field has nothing left to withhold. Most people fail to move from begging into having because they try to let go before the nervous system is ready. And when letting go is forced, it becomes another form of control. Control still signals lack. It still says something must change for me to feel okay. The field reads that immediately. You cannot release dependency by commanding it away. Dependency dissolves only when the body feels internally sufficient. And sufficiency is not created by thought. It is created by safety. From a neurological perspective, the nervous system releases grasping only when it perceives stability in the present moment. If safety is associated with a future outcome, the system will continue to ask, hope, pray, and lean forward, not because you're doing it wrong, but because the body is protecting you. This is why detachment techniques often backfire. They attempt to override biology with intention. The mind says, I'm letting go. While the body says, not yet. That internal contradiction creates more incoherence, not less. True detachment is not an action. It is a consequence. It happens when the nervous system no longer needs the outcome to regulate itself. When emotional regulation no longer depends on arrival, the body stops asking automatically. There is no struggle, no suppression, no pretending. The shift feels like relief without excitement. This is also why neutrality is the bridge state. Neutrality is emotionally safe. It does not demand belief. It does not demand certainty. It simply removes urgency. And urgency is the root of begging. When urgency dissolves, the posture changes. The body stops leaning forward. Attention returns to the present. Breath deepens naturally. The system stops monitoring the future. This is where identity begins to upgrade. Identity shifts not because you decide to be someone new, but because the nervous system learns a new baseline. That baseline says I am okay now. From that baseline, wanting no longer feels like need. Desire becomes preference instead of requirement. Preference is light. Requirement is heavy. The field responds to lightness faster than it responds to force. This is also why trying to convince yourself you already have something doesn't work. That creates cognitive pressure. Pressure is still grasping. Having is effortless. It does not need repetition. Instead of saying I have, alignment emerges when the body feels I don't need this to arrive for me to be settled. That internal message changes everything. The moment the system no longer needs the outcome to stabilize, the field receives a clean signal. This is the paradox that confuses people. Manifestation accelerates when you no longer emotionally require the thing you want. Not because you stopped caring, but because you stop depending. Dependency creates hierarchy. Hierarchy creates distance. The energy of having is flat equal. Horizontal. You are not below what you want and you are not above it. You are simply compatible with it. Compatibility collapses distance instantly. From a quantum perspective, this is when probability stops oscillating. The observer is no longer pulled by expectation or fear. The state becomes stable enough for reality to finalize. This is also why aligned manifestation often feels anticlimactic. When things arrive, there is no emotional explosion. There is recognition. Of course, the nervous system had already normalized the state. And because it's normalized, it stays. In the next part, we'll explore the external signs that begging has fully dissolved. How reality begins to respond differently once you stop asking from lack. And why results start appearing without emotional effort or announcement. Because the moment you stop imploring reality to change, reality stops keeping its distance. When begging dissolves, reality doesn't announce it with fireworks. The change is subtle at first, almost easy to miss if you're still expecting drama. The first sign is not that things arrive immediately. The first sign is that your relationship with outcomes changes. You stop tracking time, not intentionally, not through discipline. You simply notice that days pass without you checking, rehearsing, or emotionally revisiting what you want. The mind stops circling the desire. The body stops asking questions. Attention returns to what is happening now without effort. This is coherence settling in. Another sign is how you respond to obstacles. When begging is present, obstacles feel personal. They trigger frustration, doubt, or the urge to correct your vibration. When having is embodied, obstacles feel informational, neutral. They don't destabilize you. They don't collapse your state. The nervous system remains steady. This steadiness is not resignation. It is confidence without tension. Confidence that does not need reassurance. Confidence that does not argue with reality. And reality responds differently to that. External events begin to rearrange without you pushing them. Conversations happen at the right time. Opportunities surface without emotional charge. People show up without pursuit. The timing feels natural rather than dramatic. This is not luck. It is alignment expressing itself. One of the clearest signs that begging has ended is that you stop doing manifestation. You're no longer performing techniques to fix your state. You're no longer checking whether you're aligned enough. Those behaviors disappear because they're no longer necessary. The system feels complete. This is also when language changes. You don't speak about what you want in hopeful terms. You speak about it factually or not at all. There is no emotional pull in your words. And because words carry less charge, they carry more truth. The field responds to truth. Another sign is how you experience silence. Silence no longer feels empty. It feels full. You don't rush to fill it with visualization, affirmation, or reassurance. You trust the stillness, and that stillness becomes communicative. In quantum terms, stillness is the most coherent signal you can broadcast. This is also when manifestation begins to feel automatic. Not because you mastered technique, but because you stabilized identity. Identity is the true attractor. When identity no longer asks, reality no longer delays. You don't feel like you're waiting for life to respond. Life feels responsive already. And when things arrive, they don't feel like proof. They feel like confirmation of a state you already knew. This is why people often say, "It happened right after I stopped caring." What they really mean is, "It happened right after I stopped depending." Dependency was the noise. Independence is the signal. From this place, manifestation is no longer effortful. It's relational. You're not pulling reality toward you. You're moving in step with it. The relationship becomes reciprocal rather than hierarchical. And this is the point where many people unknowingly sabotage themselves by reintroducing urgency, by telling others, by checking timelines, by emotionally leaning forward again. The system remembers the old posture and tries to return to it. The key is not discipline. It is recognition. Once you recognize the feeling of having the quiet, grounded sufficiency, you don't chase it. You protect it by staying present. You let it normalize further. You let it become your baseline. In the final part, we'll integrate everything into a single shift. How to stabilize this state long-term. How to prevent slipping back into imploring. And how to move through life from the energy of having, not asking. So the field continues to respond without resistance. Because the field was never waiting for you to want harder. It was waiting for you to stop asking from lack. At some point, this stops being something you practice and becomes something you live from. You don't wake up asking yourself if you're aligned. You don't scan your emotions for hidden resistance. You don't negotiate with reality anymore. You simply move through life from a quieter, more settled place inside yourself. This is the real shift. When begging dissolves completely, you no longer feel the need to manage outcomes. You respond to what shows up, but you don't chase what hasn't. You take action without emotional attachment to results. You speak when it's natural and remain silent when silence feels right. There is no inner pressure to prove anything to the universe. That pressure was the block. What replaces it is trust. Not blind trust, but embodied trust. The kind that lives in the nervous system, not the mind. The kind that allows you to stay present even when you don't yet see the full picture. And paradoxically, this is when the picture begins to assemble itself more clearly than ever before. From this state, reality doesn't feel like something you're trying to influence. It feels responsive, cooperative, as if it's been waiting for you to stop pulling on it so tightly. The quantum field does not reward effort. It responds to stability. When your internal world becomes stable enough, external reality no longer needs to resist you. There is no friction, no pushback, no delay. Things move because there is nothing inside you contradicting their arrival. This is what people mistake for effortless manifestation. But it isn't effortless because you did nothing. It's effortless because you stopped doing the one thing that was blocking everything, asking from a place of lack. This is also why true alignment feels deeply personal. It's not loud. It's not performative. You don't need to tell anyone you're aligned. You don't need validation. The state itself is self-confirming. And once you've tasted this state, you realize something important. Manifestation was never about getting better at asking. It was about becoming someone who no longer needs to ask at all. This doesn't mean you stop desiring. Desire still exists. But it exists without urgency, without attachment, without emotional bargaining. Desire becomes directional instead of desperate. From here life becomes a process of refinement rather than struggle. You refine your state. You refine your attention. You refine your relationship with time. And the field responds with precision. This is also where deeper work begins. Because once begging dissolves, you start to see how many layers of identity were built around lack, waiting, and effort. Letting those layers fall away isn't something you rush. It's something you allow. That's why this phase often coincides with a period of quiet reorganization. You simplify, you slow down, you feel less compelled to react, and in that space, something new stabilizes. If you feel yourself entering this phase where urgency is fading, where silence feels fuller, where you're no longer asking but not yet explaining, that's not stagnation, that's integration. This is the threshold where identity catches up to frequency. And this is exactly why I created Quantum Rebirth. Not as a technique to get things faster, but as a structured way to stabilize this shift, to move fully out of the identity of asking and into the identity of having. The work inside it isn't about manifesting more. It's about removing what still pulls you back into lack. The quantum grimoire that comes with it exists for the same reason, to give form to this transition. So the state you've touched becomes the state you live from. If this message resonated at a level deeper than thought, you'll find the link in the pinned comment. Not as something to chase, but as something to meet when it feels right. Because the moment you stop begging reality to respond, reality doesn't hesitate anymore. It moves.